Greetings from the fourth fairway on Willowbrook Golf Course. We'll be out there today playing 18, if I can get it to aim right. It's a balmy, maybe 70 out. Nice place to be during the winter, not during the summer. How are you all? Welcome. I used to talk about all the time, especially when my book first came out in 2013, about the mansion of our minds, the mansions of our experience, of our existence, as containing many rooms. There's the room of sleep consciousness. There's the room of dream consciousness. There's the world of awake consciousness. And each of those areas of the house which are awake consciousness has many, 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 many different rooms, like emptiness or the void. That itself is vast. Like one's sense of presence, the energetic body that permeates your physical body and electrifies it. The sense of the divine within, of wanting to surrender, of wanting to worship the divinity within. That's another room. The physical body itself, perception of the physical body, is another room. Where are there tensions? Where is the energies? Where is there pain? And there's the room where you first discover the inner light of consciousness that lights up the void within and without. There's the room that you can enter that would take a lifetime to explore, of inner energies, bliss, love, healing energies, transformative energies, and using those energies. And then there's the emotional room, the emotional body, so to speak. The difference about the emotional body is that the emotions are with respect to relationship with others. You can't be a non-dualist and say, they're all consciousness. When you're in a relationship with another, you have to accept your own individuality as well as your separateness from that other and their individuality. And the emotions come into being through relating. Love, anger, hatred, judgmentalism. They're all related to others. While none of the other rooms are related to others. The void is common to all. The light of consciousness is common to all. Sleep consciousness is consciousness to all. The sense of presence can be made available to anybody who just concentrates on their bodies and the energies within them long enough. The dream body is the same for all of us. The dreams, the content may vary, but the dream itself is experienced by everybody as the same. Some are more terrifying than others. Others are more loving, the content varies and moods and themes vary. But it's emotions, especially strong emotions like love, anger, bondedness, eroticism, which causes guilt, regret, fear. sense of loss and depression. And it's this body, this emotional area of ourselves that many, many people in spirituality don't know thoroughly because they're trying to know other states, like the so-called enlightenment, like awakening, like the void, like nothingness, which is another room. But so many avoid the emotional relationships. There are people that have a hard time doing relationships with connecting to another. So instead they do spiritual practices. Or they do something else with involvement in the world. I think I was one of these. No, I was one of these. It's so much easier to go inside and find happiness by looking at various bodies within oneself, explore the inner world, and have the outer world fall apart. In the sense of either not participating or getting so lost in your inner discoveries that you don't keep up with the outer world and what's going on in there, and things just drop away because of your lack of attention. So where do you fit in the spectrum? What are you seeking? Bliss, energies, transformation, enlightenment, awakening, seeking the void. What are you seeking? Do you know what you are seeking exists? Or have you read books and you presume certain things exist which may not exist for you? As Robert used to say, you have to be very careful what you wish for. Because what you wish for, you may get, and you may be disappointed with what you find. In any event, don't avoid relationships. Relationships can keep you embedded in the world, while the rest of you explore all the inner worlds and transcendental worlds of the void, of the light of consciousness, the sense of presence, of bliss and energies. All of those can be exciting for a while. But almost everybody I know that has gone through the bliss, after a while they fall away or become so subtle that it becomes a very constant background of subtle bliss. But it doesn't affect what's going on with you in the world anymore. Bliss can be great for a few years. To have bliss coming out of your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your whole body is in bliss. Tingling, exciting energies going through you. Being able to look inside your bodies and see swirling currents of this energy inside, which is not electricity, but you might say the life force in its various forms of chi or kundalini energy. See them circulating the chakras, see them electrifying the body. But then you have to come back to everyday life. That's why Sun Tzu, for example, taught us the simple things in life. That is our true reality. We can dwell in emptiness for a long period of time, but you come back carrying water, chopping wood, and having tea. Everyday life. However boring it may perceive to be, however with or without love, with or without bliss. But it's the ordinary mind, the everyday mundane mind, that you have to live with most totally and completely. Can you be satisfied with ordinary mind? Can you be satisfying sitting in your room watching videos? Can you be satisfied being in a relationship that is permanent? Or are you going to be looking for energies and new experiences, new explorations, new worlds to understand, within and without? Continuous explorer. What is it that you want? Be very clear about what you want, rather than just seeking enlightenment or anything else in the world or in the inner world, the mansions of your mind, of your experience. What is it that's driving you to seek? If you can be precise about knowing what that is, you can be very precise about your seeking. I listed a post which David Spiro was talking about, how he talks to a lot of people and finds out what they say on the surface isn't the real motivation. That they could start talking with him about wanting enlightenment. But he says he works with them a while individually and finds out what the real base emotion is loneliness or sadness, and an escape, trying to get an escape from that. Get an escape through that by becoming enlightened and supposedly rising above the loneliness, not having any feelings or hurt or sense of loss, depression, anger, guilt, jealousy. You want to transcend all of that and get out of the human messy relationships. But human relationships, as Chaitananda said, are messy. They're complex. They're not clearly defined. Ever-flowing. Emotions change, needs change. External circumstances changes. And when the external circumstance change, what you want and need may change too. Who you are may change depending on the situation. Now, based on this, does anybody have any questions? I asked this relatively early in satsang rather than at the end. Give people time to express themselves, and if need be, to work. Anybody have any questions? You can type one in on the chat screen. How many of you are clearly aware of the void within, the emptiness? How many aware of their own sense of presence as an energetic body permeating the physical body? How many are aware of bliss within, the energies within flowing around, creating bliss? Are these things you want? If you're having them, are they serving you well? Do you want more of them? Do you want less of them? Or are you seeking something entirely different? Are you seeking God? Are you seeking self-knowledge or self-realization? Are you seeking love? To be held, to be respected, to be honored. For some property you have, such as a loving heart or your intellect. Everybody wants something. What do you want? What do you want? Be clear about it. What do you want? You know, Francis Bennett is an old friend of mine. He's been preaching a variant of Christianity where the emphasis is on interactions, human interactions, and being compassionate, being forgiving, being gentle with another. And I thought he never paid enough attention to or respect for the transcendent. That the vast majority of people into spirituality are in it for transcendental experiences, to know the deathless states, to know God, to know the void, to live in the void. And it didn't have much to do with interpersonal relationships. But he deals with it in a generic sense about being compassionate and caring for others in a kind of pastoral therapy way, based on his experience of doing pastoral counseling. But he's got a point. He attacks the non-dualists for their kind of arrogance of understanding and their dismissal of the personal, their dismissal of a separate sense of self, their dismissal of the meaningfulness of suffering because there's nobody to suffer. Their just absolute belief that there is no self, personal or otherwise, which is common in the East. All of Buddhism doesn't believe in a self, either of a personal self or the transcendental self, on a whole. That's 500 million people. And although Christians supposedly believe in the self, most expressly they do, but you see them interacting with people And it's not done from a very polite, compassionate, or humble point of view. It's done from the viewpoint of judgment. Thou shall be some way. Even in the West, a healthy sense of self is often absent in most of us. I didn't have a good sense of what myself was until I was maybe 65. Before that, I had no idea of what a self was, because I spent so many years in Zen and Buddhism, where there was no self. So there was no clearly defined self-experience within me. The self-experience comes out of relationship with others. It's felt in relationship to others. It's built originally in the ages 3, 4, 5 by your relationship with your mother and your father. Healthy sense of self means the ability to look inside and to breathe easy in your own skin. You've got enough nurturing when you're very young to feel satisfied with yourself. When you have that, then what that self wants and needs becomes really simple and very clear. Connection, love for another, and the food and shelter necessities of life. Nothing else really is that important. Not fame, not bliss, not enlightenment, not the sense of presence. None of those things. Those things could be considered, in the largest sense, spiritual entertainment, because you become an explorer of your inner world, of the mansions of the mind, of the mansions of consciousness. And while you're an explorer, it's having a hard time connecting with the external world in a meaningful, personal way. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I've got a question here. I do not know what I want. It is just a longing in my heart. It feels like seeking internal love/peace. Yeah, that's the basic longing in all people. It may seem spiritual until it's well defined. And it only gets well defined if you can look at it for a prolonged period of time and play with that feeling. That basic longing that you feel is your human longing for relationship, for connection, and for love. But we spiritualize it by taking it out of the realm of here and now relationships with physical others and replace it with an abstraction of seeking God or seeking enlightenment, which is an abstract, depersonalized longing that you can spend a lifetime trying to solve or resolve, but can be resolved so easily if you can do a relationship with somebody without running away and being authentic in that relationship, being true to your emotions, expressing your emotions. Without that ability to get in your emotions, express emotions, feel emotions, make demands from those points of view in you on the other, you won't know what it's really like to be a human being, to be an embodied self. The divine comes down and fills a body with the divine. And that turns it into Angela, or Spencer, or Max, or Ed, or Jay, or Michael. The divine comes into you before you're even born. And then you're born. You realize the world around you. You get a name. You get a history. You get training in how the world is and what the world is. You pass through all the developmental stages that psychology talks about, of the various years and the cognitive development that takes place. The ability to recognize external objects takes place at a certain age. After the realization of external objects, you can become aware of the internal objects of yourself if you get enough nurturing from your mother and from your father. That part of you feels loved and you can express it. But if you haven't had that nurturing as an infant through the 7th or 8th year, you may never develop a sense of self. Instead, you get into spirituality and you deal with energies instead. How something feels to you in an undefined way in terms of internal energies. That makes me feel good. That makes me feel bad. That makes me feel I don't know what it makes me feel. It's undefined how I feel. When the energies haven't been resolved into their individual emotions that underline those energies, you're essentially blind when it comes to relationships. You may know how to manipulate another person with the use of energies. You may know how to control people with the use of energies. You may know how to create a sense of love in another for you by manipulating energies. But that's not a relationship. That's a capture. Capture and use. There are many teachers that use these energies. Chaitananda is one. He uses energies to control and to heal people. With hundreds of followers, he uses energies. Everything to him, he says, is energy, not emotions. Now, we're talking about a whole class of teachers, the energy teachers, like Esman, like Chaitananda, the Shaivites, who have a predisposition to having a positive attitude and to repress or hold apart from the negative and just keep uplifting yourself higher and higher. But to me, the denial of the negative energies, of the bad emotional states, of the bad energy states, is unbalanced and ultimately a failure. The most substantial failure of our time was Muktananda as an pure energy teacher. He crashed and burned. And out of those ashes, Chidvilasananda and Nityananda brought forth a new organization, which is very similar to the old organization, with the emphasis on worship of the gurus and energies. Getting energies from the guru, from the satsang, from the sangha. It's kind of a spiritual cannibalism, where you are there for other people to get their energy, their attention, their usefulness. It's quite self-centered. And yet the energies can heal a person that is profoundly ill mentally. But is that what you want? Is that what your own particular mind desires, what your own particular soul wants? Are you clear, or can you become clear of what that longingness is? And last week somebody talked about the loneliness. What is the loneliness for? Is it the absence of somebody in your life? Are you seeking to fill that with a relationship with a guru or with God? Do you want to have a relationship with a guru or a God because it's so abstract, it's easy to have, you just surrender to God within yourself and you become self-satisfied and not have to depend on anybody else? Their fickleness, their demandedness, their hurt, their misconceptions. It's always easier to deal or to love a dead guru or God in the abstract than it is to sustain love for another person in a real relationship. Even then, a lot of people do partial relationships. This person here, another person in another place, another person at a different time, each one providing a certain amount of energy for them. So they have multiple relationships, getting some from something and something from another person, without ever being able to commit to a single relationship. Most often, this is a schizoid element in all of us. Fear of closeness in a committed relationship. Fear of being trapped into one relationship and have no freedom, unable to get away, to be consumed by one relationship. It feels all-consuming, like it's going to destroy us, smother us. But that's something that has to be explored within you, that experience of being smothered or not free. Oh, I got a question coming. Okay. Enrique, can you read that question? From Marco to everyone.
Yeah, sure. Experience shows that loving a human being can only break your heart because if this person dies, it feels as this love is not eternal. Hence, if a guru tells you that he will never die, loving a guru seems more a way to eternity. And therefore the guru tells you not to love him, but yourself. and the seeking for objects dissolves. But I feel like it can make me more egoistic and lonely.
What can make you feel more egotistic and lonely? I don't know. There's a lot of preparation before that last sentence. And I don't know whether you're talking about loving a human, loving a guru, or loving yourself. Is it loving yourself, you mean, can make you more egotistic and lonely? Rumi had a saying, which I repeat over and over again. God keeps breaking your heart, breaking it open until it stays open. You can't so fear the pain of loss, the pain of separation and death, that you can't commit to a relationship with another human being. Such fear will destroy you, keep you lonely, locked in an eternal relationship of you to you. And loving yourself, really, it can only happen when you can love another, because it's through loving another that you find your sense of self as love within you directed towards that other person. Marco, can you think of some time in your past when you loved somebody? Feel that love. Now, if you feel that love within yourself, you'll find that sensation of love, that emotion of love is in you, in your chest somewhere. Just being aware of that love within you for somebody or something out there creates the beginnings of a sense of relationship, and from that, a sense of self in relationship to another. As long as you just long for an eternal peace, eternal love, you're not going to find it, because it's specifically a love for a real relationship. But if you spiritualize it and make it into a love for God, so it's everlasting and always infinite, you won't find anything but shadows. You can find love of God for a while, but it wears away when you find out you're still living alone. You have to be strong enough to love a person. And that may take years of preparation and spirituality. I consider a lot of spirituality preparation. For example, experiencing the void teaches you the ephemeral nature of everything, including love for a person. Love for a person can come and it can go. When it comes, it's great. When it goes, it's terrible. But the emptiness is the underlying state from which you can watch the whole process and decrease the pain. Or if you're good enough and you're spiritual enough, you can entirely end the pain by dissolving it in emptiness. But then again, you're failing to do relationships. Marco, you have to be willing to have your heart broken over and over again. Just get used to it. Tolerate it, as intolerable as it is. Because when you're new to relationships, the choices you make will always be bad. So be prepared to learn. Be prepared to be hurt. And don't be so frightened of being hurt, you don't engage. Remember, God keeps breaking your heart over and over and over again until it stays open. And when it stays open, you will feel such relaxation and such peace. It will be the eternal peace you've been looking for. But it's because your heart, personal heart, has been broken over and over and over again. So it's not holding on so strong to its identity with Marco, with the person Marco, but it's just open-heartedness. Then you can learn to live from your heart in a very loving, caring, compassionate way, but still be susceptible to the normal fears, the normal pains of relationship, like loss, jealousy, fear, anger. Those will always be there. You will always want them to be there. Because if you ever overcome them altogether, you're not really doing relationship anymore. It's kind of a superficial relationship. Deeper relationships require a kind of childlike simplicity and openness. Openness to be one, openness to accept. And with that openness comes the ability to be hurt. Any other questions? Does anybody have any answers? Enrique, do you have an answer today? Marcus, any answers today? Spencer, do you have an answer for me? Walker, do you have a question? Brenda, to everybody, maybe it leads to unconditional love. Maybe what leads to unconditional love? What is it based on? And where does that come from? Maybe this, maybe it leads to unconditional love. What is it? Loving oneself? What is unconditional love? What does that mean? That's a word. What does it mean in real personal relationships? What does unconditional love mean? Not as a definition out of a book, but in real life relationships. I've found that one of the most overused and misunderstood phrases ever, unconditional love. You can have unconditional love for your cat, for your dog, but if you're in a personal relationship, there are expectations, there are other people's feelings that have to be taken into account. There's always conditions, except for a few rare saints who love everybody equally but aren't in relationship with anybody. If you don't have personal relationships with anybody, a real relationship, one to the other, like Ramana, everybody's equal, everybody is an appearance and consciousness to him, including himself. Then you can have equal love, unconditional love for everybody, because it's always the same for everybody. And being loved unconditionally by a guru like Ramana may feel great, but does it allow him to do relationships? Or anybody who feels the unconditional love of Ramana or God, does it help them do relationships? Or do you think relationships are irrelevant? The person is irrelevant. The personal is irrelevant. It's not. Okay. Sometimes I feel it no matter what happens. I wish I understood that too. Things like that have to be explained in more than just one sentence. It doesn't make any sense, but in a dozen sentences, it ties everything together. Does that mean you're feeling lost and confused? What does that mean more specifically? Any other questions? Okay, Angela. About emotions by not just experiencing energies, do you mean when you invite the emotion totally with the gentleness, you not only feel the energy of the emotion, but also the personal of it, the pain, the joy? I would keep these separate. Don't deal with identified emotions as energies, and don't deal with unidentified energies as being emotions. They're not. Energies have nothing to do with emotions, except that totally accepting a negative emotion within yourself will dissolve into endless energies for a period of time, for an hour, a day, few days. As big negative emotions get resolved within oneself, it releases these energies within you of the life force that has been blocked by the poorly expressed or poorly experienced emotion, whether it be of fear, jealousy, anger, rage, love. When these are felt fully, one feels bliss, total bliss. But that doesn't mean that they're the same thing. Emotions are articulations of energies. They may be translatable one to the other, but not experientially. Experientially, they're either emotions or they're energies. Now, if you love somebody, of course you'll feel energies towards that person, but those are separate. Sometimes you feel energies from them, sometimes you feel love from them. And you can differentiate the two. But don't get the two mixed up. There are those who have almost no ability to read or feel or express emotions at all, and instead make very generalistic expressions about energies because they haven't been defined within yourself and broken into various kinds of appearances or emotions or objects of some sort, but are just undefined energies. It's okay to live in such a field of energies, but it's such an incomplete life. There's so much more than just energies. Uh, Angela, did that answer what you were asking? Well, no questions. I'm out of gas. I gave my all. Come prepared next week with some questions. Andrew, have a question for me next week or an answer. Same time next week. Bye-bye.